Welcome, Australia. It's that time again for another podcast from the Mate team, where we try and get into your head with stuff that makes us sound smart. Sit back and relax. It's time for us to be mates. Welcome, Australia, to another Let's Be Mate podcast with your team at Mate. Bosco, Dom, how are you guys going this week?
Good, Faz, yourself?
Good.
Good. Another week, another dollar, as they say in the Mate business. So today is a pretty interesting story. We're going to talk to a business and get some insight from an Aussie startup business who have initially had a lot of success raising around about 400K on Kickstarter. A really cool story, and I think it really resonates to the Mate business and how we started and how we developed as well.
And I think their product is something that's really relevant at the moment, not only with people working from home, but I think we're going to see this speed up of people working remotely more and more. And I think some of those projections around 50% by 2025 or 2030, it's going to be more like 70 or 80% of people that will be able to work remotely at some point, even if it's not 24/7, but remotely at some point during the week. So the company we're talking to today is Espresso Displays. We've got Scott and Will, who are the founders, and Gary, who's one of their advisors. So welcome, guys. Maybe give us a bit of an introduction of who you all are and what your roles are.
Yeah, so great to be here. Thanks for having us on. So I'm Will, and Scott's here as well. Scott and I first started the company back in 2018, and it was a little different back then. It was us sitting at a table, wondering how the hell do we work better sitting at this table. And instead of doing our assignment, as uni students should be doing, we started brainstorming ways of making another display so we could take that with us. And we thought, when you're at home or at the office, you have two displays, you have two monitors, and we wanted to have that same productivity, that same feeling anywhere. And so we jumped right into it. But I'll let the other guys introduce themselves.
Yeah, so I'm Scott, one of the other co-founders, and it was ultimately as simple that we noticed that at our desks, we did have a full setup, multi-screens, but we were never there, because that's what work is. Work is, where you need to be, when you need to be there. And we wanted to kind of create a versatile kind of workspace and have the tools that work could be easy, work could be fun, and ultimately be productive.
And I'm Gary. Thanks for having us, guys. I'm advising and working together with these two young gentlemen and their team. It's been a hell of a ride so far, and it's really just the beginning. So yeah, really excited to be here talking to you guys.
It's cool. You mentioned a lot of stuff there about work. And sorry, first of all, great to have you guys on board. But you spoke about where your work is, right? And so my background before working at Mate is working for Microsoft, and they focused heavily on hot seating and working from home and things like that. And in one of our previous podcasts where we spoke about working from home safely, one of the things that Microsoft did was when you work remotely, the whole idea is that the freedom to work wherever you want, right? But what happened with that is that your ergonomics, all those things that may hurt you in that environment aren't factored in. And so one of the big things I faced was not having a second screen, and sometimes not being productive when you're portable, right? And I think that's the story that your product delivers. And so I've probably jumped ahead here. So
That's all.
Yeah.
So guys, where did your initial idea come from? And can you tell us a bit more about your journey and some of the initial reviews and feedback that you did receive? Particularly, I believe you guys got some feedback from Cult of Mac and Guy Kawasaki.
Yeah, that stuff's all good to hear now, and we're really, really happy with the feedback we're getting. But to take us back right to the beginning, it was Scott and I at a table at uni saying, how the hell do we be more productive right here, right now? And then we literally just jumped on Google instead of doing our assignment. We found a few solutions. One had a projector, one had a plastic display, but there was nothing really out there at the time. And us as university students, we didn't have much business experience at the time. We wanted to get involved, get excited, and start doing something about it. But then we soon found that we're consumed by other things, and we kind of forgot about it. But then one day at home, I just thought, well, I remember that idea we had about making a second screen, as they say, and I've got a 3D printer at home, so I printed a couple brackets. And I said, oh, I'll just take it in. I'll take it to uni, and I'll show Scott and see if he remembers those conversations we had, and let's see what he thinks of it. And I pulled it out of my bag, and he loved it straight away. And looking back at it now, it looks a bit silly, but it really got us kicking forward. So from that day, I started rocking up at Scott's house every day, and I told him, mate, I'm gonna be here every day until this becomes something. And I made sure I did that. I think the very first day,
I was a bit sick, and I remember Will was kind of like, okay, I'm coming over 8 p.m. I'd worked that whole day, and then I was like, oh, I'm feeling a bit sick. I'd just been overseas in Nepal for 6 weeks. I was like, yeah, how about tomorrow? And then it was like, come on, mate, if you're going to try and delay just today. And then, I was like, okay. So Will came over, and then from there, he came over like every day. And our initial prototypes, and that's kind of what that got that initial momentum rolling. And I think that's ultimately in starting anything. It's just about getting that momentum early on. So Will did an excellent job giving me that push. But even our early prototypes was actually an attachment to your laptop that can kind of swing or maneuver out from that laptop itself. And we kind of made 4 or 5 prototypes with that kind of design, but ran into a whole bunch of complications. Like one, you got a Surface Pro there, it has a hinge at the back, so it wouldn't work with that. You don't want to put too much weight and pressure on the hinge itself, so it would fall off. And ultimately that the display itself is beyond just a laptop or just a tablet or a phone. That really seemed like the most value we could provide. And we were always looking for something that we wanted to use immediately. Yeah. And that was it. It wasn't just an attachment. It was the whole end-to-end solution of, an office you can take anywhere.
So us being engineers, we jumped straight into how do we make this? How do we make this better? But then we soon realized that this also can become a business, and we need to work out how do you actually sell this thing. As we soon found out, selling is probably a lot harder than even making. So we had to jump into that well. But to get there, we're sitting down together, and we're working on this. And then a very similar product came out, and it raised $500,000. Another one came out, raised another $500,000. We said, oh, I think we're onto something here. I think there are actually people out there that really want to work from anywhere. So we realized this is becoming a big deal. And looking at the other major players in the space, there was not many, maybe 1 or 2 that actually had a similar and related product in that space. Most of them hadn't touched it, and we thought that was a little strange. But then again, they focus on the bigger, they focus on corporations and providing tech fit outs for bigger corporations instead of the consumer that works independently. So we thought we had something, and we kept working on it. We decided to move out together. So us two and a friend of ours all moved out into a share house in North Sydney, and we started using our nights to work our days to earn money and our nights to work on the project. And yeah, that was our. We were there for 12 months, I think.
Just over 13, yeah.
But yeah, but a lot happened in there, and then I think when we arrived there, we decided to launch a Kickstarter campaign. And do you want to go into the Kickstarter campaign and how we decided Kickstarter, not Indiegogo?
Yeah, so what we needed to do is you can go and make a product, but you don't know how many do I want to buy, what's the cost, how am I going to get the cash, and there's a lot that actually goes into making a product that we're now at the other end of. And Gary's been incredible in helping us get there so far. And so we're kind of actually starting with engineers with zero marketing and sales experience, Googling how to do a Kickstarter, because that's where we were looking for products ourselves. And we're like, I guess we can kind of do that. And
that's how everybody starts. Don't worry.
And then from there, I found every single Kickstarter that raised over $200,000 in Australia. Go through LinkedIn, get on the phone, email them, friend of a friend. We spoke to them, kind of figured out the framework for what that was. And then from that, we kind of found, agencies that kind of specialize just in that, and we got their help. And then kind of build up, the email list, started to build our own community, and we were doing doing some presentations around kind of telling people about what we did. And then I think on day one, we were up until late the night before, and it was almost like the time of actually launching this big campaign. It was like we're just looking at each other saying, I guess this is it. Like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But ultimately it went really well. We got over 10 grand in the first hour or two. We got over 50 grand in the first day and over 100 grand in the first 3 days. Really had that great organic push. I think we were tweeted over 50 times. We were posted in every Facebook group. Really had that great community around us who really liked the product and really saw the value for it, because exactly as what we're seeing played out right now is that like work can be done anywhere. It really can. That it's more about how do you have the tools to fit work into your life rather than you go to a particular place because that's where work's done. And I think that's a shift that really throughout everything that's happening with COVID, that's the real transformation that's happening in the workplace now. And it's not going back. We're only going to be seeing flexibility and remote work and working in more locations, over the years to come.
I'll just I'll link Gary into this because just before we had launched, a few weeks before we had launched, the company, my first grad job, I got a job at. It turns out Gary worked there. Now the reason we knew about each other was because my sister's kids go to school with Gary's kids. Okay. And then so one I get to work the first day and I have an email. My first email is sitting in my inbox at work and it's from Gary saying, "Hey, have you started yet? Let's go have a coffee." And I'd only been at work for about 6 hours, but I thought, okay, why not? I looked at my boss. He said, "Yeah, go down." So I went to meet with Gary, and I ran him through what we were up to. At the time, we went to Shenzhen for our first time. Yeah. Just going to Shenzhen because we thought that's the best way to learn about how things are made. Just go over there and see what happens. And so, yeah, talked to Gary and I kind of got him caught up and he was really excited. I remember he asked me a million questions and I didn't get a chance to ask him one question about him because he was so excited in what we were doing and it was really great. So maybe I'll let Gary speak to that.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, it is a great origin story. It doesn't matter. It can start from anywhere. And it started through Will's niece and my daughter, which is absolutely awesome. I think what really drew me is the opportunity and the vision that Will and Scott, I'd met Scott at Outback Steakhouse several months after, and just the passion that they had for this idea is really what drew me. And then leveraging my 15 years of product development experience, I could see where there were some gaps that I could help and actually add some value. And so I persisted in offering my help until they said, well, yeah, let's do it, and became an advisor to help out. I just love helping. I want to give back. I've had the luck or the opportunity to work with 4 great Australian companies. And again, just want to give back to the little startups and try help as much as we can in Australian manufacturing and engineering.
And that's awesome, right? And listening to your story, and if I take it back to our story, and you don't progress unless. So we always say partnering is a big part of success, right? And sometimes when you have an idea or concept and you feel like you can, win with it, you always can't do everything yourself, right? You specialize in your part, and there's other people that you need to bring into your world that help you expand to achieve what you want to achieve. And trust becomes, for us, trust is big in our business, right? And we thought about, well, who do you talk to? When we think about who's going to steal it and run with it and who's going to take advantage of us, right? But I think in a startup phase, especially what we've achieved, you have to go out there and trust people with your story and what you're trying to achieve, and hope and put trust in humanity that those people that you talk to are going to help you and support you doing what you want to do. And I don't know, how's your experience with that? I mean, obviously, you only knew Gary very lightly, if you put it that way, right? But I mean, if I think about that, that's probably one of the first outsiders, would you say, that you've trusted to support your business? I'd love to hear how you thought about that and how it made you feel, because it's your baby, right? This is your baby. So how did you think about bringing somebody on the outside in?
Yeah, well, it really helped that Gary knew a little bit more than us about how to get something made. So I remember one day we're about to, we already had launched our campaign, and we kind of we launched our campaign, because you got to remember, guys, before the campaign launch, we didn't know. There was no guarantee that we were going to hit a certain amount. There was no guarantee that this project was going to do well enough for us to actually turn this into our main gig, right? So when it did that, I kind of in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, so this has happened. So now this is a bit different to anything I've done before, and I guess we've got a product to make because there's 1,500 people around the world expecting something from us, and so I went to Gary and he said, have you got this done? Have you got your SOP done? Have you got this design done? Have you got all these files? And I'm like, no. And he says, well, it's not good, mate. So don't worry, because we can get there. And I I guess I had no choice but to trust him. But he made it really easy to trust him because you could see straight away in the way he speaks and the way he acts that he is trustworthy, and you can put all your faith and value inside that. And it is a bit difficult, but the only way to know is through time. Absolutely. And through repeated exercises with someone, and then their true colors will come out. And so you have to give that onboarding time for everyone. And for Gary, it's the same. I'd say his energy, if anything, has grown. It's only got more and more, bigger and bigger since then every day. And I liked what you said before. I do believe that you need other people, just so that I think the only asset anyone has is energy. Yep. And when you give out energy, that really helps someone do their best work. But then when they do their best work, they give you energy, and you kind of just feed off each other. And I think if I didn't have these guys, there's no way I would have done this, because I've got no one to do it for other than myself. And I think definitely for me, I feed off their energy, and I'd hope they feed off mine too.
Yeah, and I think Will really touched upon a good point about, having that, like, as you start working together, you firstly have the values of kind of what you're looking to create, for who, for how, and what's your approach, in the same way that we spoke about what's mate's approach. And that's really important. And then I think I had a conversation with Gary a couple of weeks ago about how naturally we all kind of blended together, because I think we kind of, with the vision, I think Gary saw the vision exactly. Like he lived it, he knows it, and he's known it even before Espresso's existed and before he's kind of started working alongside us. So it was one of those things really upon, ongoing, I guess, time and getting to know each other. But also it's like, if you see it and you believe in that same goal and same vision, it just becomes that much easier and more natural. And that's, goes into all famous business books and stuff say, it's the culture and the values that drives everything else. Yes, you got to have the right technical capabilities, but in the same thing, it's the values and culture of any vision that's how you're going to decide. And I think it's a pleasure working alongside with Gary, and it makes it all much more enjoyable.
And for our listeners that are business minded and entrepreneurs, I would like to say a statement that I think, if one of the biggest things you can do is know very early on what you're not good at, and what you don't know what to do. And if you know that, I think you will be successful, because you'll always be looking for that skill in a thing, or in a process, in a software solution, or in a person as you go along. So I think that's one of the big things. People thinking about starting a business, or who's got the entrepreneur flair or ideas, make sure you're very clear about what you don't know. And then I think that then you'll easily find a solution to get around that. Whereas if you think you know everything, you'll get lost along the way and you'll do things badly. And that's sort of, and everybody makes mistakes, but we're giving the opportunity for people not to make mistakes today.
So Gary helped you round out some of those, gaps that you had around the production process. But working remotely and producing a product overseas, what are some of the challenges you've seen around that? Especially, I guess, COVID's even exacerbated that further, not being able to physically be there.
Maybe I could start here just giving the example of how challenging it actually is, and then you could give the story about how you actually lived it in China. Having done it for about 15 years now, the best way to develop something is to be on the ground, and it is extraordinarily difficult to do something remotely. And I've done it time and time again, where when you're developing something, you've got to sit next to the person doing it, help them out, get it done, and then move on. So moving from that model to a remote model has been extraordinarily difficult, especially when where you're working has shut down, and also all the implications that have happened throughout the world. So what did we have to do? We had to really ensure that communication was very frequent. And when you're dealing with China and a different language, that just exacerbates it even more. So it's really about that comms. When you're standing there in the office, even though you're not speaking the same language, the body language helps you get to the answer faster. But when you're over a Zoom call or over a WeChat or over an email, just takes longer. You get there, but it just takes longer.
Absolutely.
So I think that's what we've encountered, and I've seen that previously. And that's why whenever I'm working with a team, I just say, get on a plane and go over there. But that's not going to happen very soon anymore. So we've got to work out on new ways to do it. I've got 5 P's of product development that I live by, that I've developed over like the last 15 years. And that's persistence, passion, positivity, patience, and pain. It takes those 5 to get anything out. Oh,
is that trademarked?
It is personally trademarked. I haven't gone outside yet, but I've just found that as long as you've got those 5, you will get there. Now, you will make mistakes and you will fail, but those fails are the best thing ever, because then you'll make it even better afterwards. So, so that's just a bit of background about the challenges of remote working. But Will actually got on the plane and went over there and lived throughout COVID.
So I think it was a November 10 or something. I'm like, okay, we really need to actually go over there because it looks like we have to make a product. So flying over there and landing, I remember the first day getting there. Within a few hours, I was in a boardroom meeting with the head of the factory discussing terms for manufacturing, and I can't say I had much experience in that. So it was a bit of negotiation, a bit of debate. I had to learn all that on the go. But again, luckily I had Gary there. But we quickly found out there's just differences in cultures really affect collaboration, and it makes it so, because you feel like you have to go through another layer of translation, and it's not so much the language, it's more of the way we do things, and there's a different way depending on the culture, and so we have to adapt to their way of doing things so we can communicate together. And again, it's not so much the language; it's just more the way the work, the style of work. And it took a few weeks being over there, but once we really understood them better, we were able to contribute more and move along more faster. But yeah, as Gary said, I was there. So I was there during up until when COVID became a big thing in China. I was there through that. So I have been through 2 lockdowns, one first in China and then the second one here. So history is repeating itself for me. And it was a lot different being in China and seeing that they were very, very, very strict on the lockdown as compared to here. But being so strict meant they were able to get out faster. So I think production opened a few weeks later than it normally would have after Chinese New Year. But that's only, they'll be able to be that fast because of how strict they enforce their restrictions. So but we're back to full capacity now. But for a few weeks, they were really focused on different projects because they've got a hierarchy internally for them to work on, and they have to finish that before they can jump on other people's projects. But we're back to full production now.
That's awesome. I think it's a really cool story. I mean, I know my experience in Asia. I lived there for a fair bit and did work in China and Japan and Korea and all the different Asian cultures. And to your point, Gary, before, when the language is second to the local language for people, so obviously a person that speaks English speaking to a Korean person, etc., being in face-to-face sort of is the best form of communication, because you can use your arms, drawings, and things like that to communicate. And what I noticed, especially in the Southeast Asia culture, is that they will tell you yes all the time, even if they don't understand what you've told them. And what happens is that you walk away thinking, and I've learned 1,000 times, you walk away thinking everybody understood what you said. 3 months later, nothing's done, and they had no clue from that first conversation. They had no clue what you spoke about, and they felt like they shouldn't speak up or tell you that they didn't know what they were talking about as well. And so that's a very valid point. Anybody on this listening to this podcast is thinking about doing work in Asia, remember that make sure you confirm everything, so the other side understands what you're saying.
So you guys were able to raise over 400,000, I think it was, on Kickstarter. Just tell us a little bit about that, and if you had to do it again, would you do anything differently?
Yeah. So with the Kickstarter, the way that it works, for any people who aren't as familiar with it, it's you give an offering. So for us, we had 2 displays and a few accessories. And you kind of the way it actually works is kind of like you like kind of donate or pledge, as Kickstarter says, the amount that is basically your retail sell price, and in return we will give one of those based on the pledge that you've got. And the way that kind of works, I think, because of the way that pre-sales work in different countries and then shipping, all that type of stuff, it's very much it's a big social campaign and launch. And for us, that was a compressed window of marketing and sales and everything 101, and which started off with a big pre-sale list. We had 4 weeks, a very big 4 weeks of preparation. We're doing a lot of talks. We're building an email list. We ran, I think, a competition as well, to get people involved. And then from there, we had the big launch day, and the first 2 or 3 days is very big, and from there it's just about ours went for 40 days. So we're just every single day emailing new journalists, we were reaching out to new places, doing a whole bunch of stuff just to try and get the word out there. And we're featured in some things like Osdroid, which is the Australian Android magazine. Mm-hmm. We're in Smart Company as well. They had a bit of a feature on us. Right. So a few things like that, just to really get the name out there and to make that campaign quite good. But going into doing that, so say with no brand, with nothing to launch or anything like that, it is a pretty expensive marketing activity. So you do have to, invest a lot in, having a nice video, having really nice content that makes people be willing to pledge without actually having the final product or being able to buy on Amazon and receive it in 2 days' time. So for us, it was the natural approach for what we needed at the time, because we needed to create and really sell that vision of, look, this is what the product is and this is what we plan to make it, but we need to know how many to make, and we need to know that validation in order for us to go ahead and do all of that. Understand if there's really like is there a business case for doing this, and if so, that's going to determine the volume. Whether it's say if 100 people did it, it'd be very different to say 1,000, which is also very different to say 10,000 units. So we need to know which one of those paths to take, and that gave us that initial momentum to get that going. And even since then, we've added a whole bunch of we've added some features, and the product's been even better than kind of what we expected and what we've promised at the beginning, as we kind of learnt when we got into the details of that product development, and we could make the appropriate decisions to do so. So crowdfunding was certainly the best path for us to launch, and given the stage that we were at. But there's been a big learning curve there since. And if you do have your direct to customer base communication and relationship, you might not need to go through some of those channels where you do have to there are agency fees and there are platform fees, and it's a very compressed marketing campaign.
What I liked about what you said before about you do most of your, you don't use an agency, you do all your branding in-house. I think we kind of learned a bit about that during our campaign, where we had an agency reaching out to PR, but we found that they care less than 1% of what you care, because all the big outlets that we ended up talking to was from our own push organically. And because they go at 5 p.m, they clock off, they go home, they enjoy their weekend. They don't think about it when they go to bed. Whereas we can't sleep because we're freaking out about what's the best way to reach more people. And so we end up doing a way better job ourselves.
We're here, and 4 years in, you'll still be freaking out, trust me. But I mean, like the Kickstarter platform, and I've only ever invested in one thing in Kickstarter. It was the bag with the where it hides the zippers, and it has the USB ports on the side. Have you seen that? Is it like the anti-theft backpacks, where when you're holding the backpack, you don't see the zippers on the outside; they're on the inside, so they're hidden behind your back.
Yep.
And then I see them everywhere now, right? And so that gives you an idea of the opportunity. And I think I see Kickstarter as a platform for you to test your idea and not go and spend crazy amount of money with something that may not work, right? And it's a cost-effective way to just test the waters to see, all right, is this thing going to work? I'll build a business based on what people are saying here. And if people are investing and putting money in, then freaking hell, this thing can definitely work if people are putting money in. So, which I think it's a really good platform to use.
I bought a first mechanical keyboard on Kickstarter, which everybody in the office
hears it.
Everybody in the office actually gave me crap about it because it looks kind of retro. It's Keychron. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah.
Is it like cherry switches?
Yeah, there's a Gatoron switches and there's a couple of other options. But yeah, so they've got so they started with one model, now they've got 6 or 7 that they sell direct through online stores. So yeah, they started on Kickstarter as well. So
yeah.
So guys, for our listeners, we probably should talk about a little bit about the product, and I'll let you have your spiel. But there's also some pretty cool accessories and attachments that you can add onto your screen. So tell us a bit about the product.
Yeah, so our product is the world's thinnest portable monitor. It's a desktop monitor in a tablet form factor. So just with a USB-C cable, you can plug it from your laptop in, or even phones and tablets and other devices that use USB-C. You can plug it in to just have access an extra screen for whatever device you're using it from. It's touchscreen. It's ultra thin. It's 5.3 millimeters in thickness, so it's thinner than an iPad Pro, and it really works incredibly well. It's very simple to use, and I'll let Will talk about the Mac feature. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so I remember one night, Scott got home from, I think it was at uni or something, and he said, we don't have a good stand. We need to make a good stand. So I just jumped on CAD and we prototyped something together, and we found out that stand ended up being our biggest accessory seller. And we focused around magnets because magnets are just they just snap and then they connect, right? You don't have to screw anything on. You don't have to clip anything in. It snaps, and it's so easy. So every accessory we designed, we made sure you could just use it within 1 second. You could just snap it on, because we knew this whole thing's portable. So if you have to screw it on, no one's going to use it. It's no longer portable. It doesn't matter if it weighs 1 gram. If you have to screw it in, it's not portable. So we focus on magnets. And then with Mac, Mac users are a huge user base for us. So a lot of the backers were asking for Mac, so Mac Touch, to be able to use Touch on Mac. And then Mac had a big, they changed to Catalina operating system update during the campaign, and then we had to find a way to make that work, because Touch was so important. So we ended up getting Touch functionality working really well on Mac, and so now you can customize gestures, and you can set all that up how you like. So you can play around, you can multitask using your fingers on a Mac.
So it can really turn your MacBook Pro with a second screen into a 2-in-1. So you can really use it like a tablet without actually having an iPad. So just really having that awesome versatility for how you want to use and how you best work. And we kind of provide that right solutions for it. And I think as far as our positioning of, where do we sit in this market? You've got these big players your HPs and Dells and whatnot. And you've also got other kind of no-name manufacturers. And you can tell that either of those groups, neither of them really care about making the individual more productive. They're very focused on, having a technology solution. An HP will chop off the top of a laptop, and other manufacturers will look at portable monitors selling. But it's not really the design focused around how do we actually make people like us that work anywhere and everywhere, how do we actually help them? And I think that we're the only ones that have these other stands, like the Visa stand, the Mount Go, the Mount Pro. And that's because we identified that there needed to be better ways to actually set it up, the stand, that the product experience doesn't end just with a monitor, like a tablet. If I give you a tablet or a monitor, you hold it and you're like, what do I do with this? It's actually the stands and all the attachments and how your whole workspace comes together that is really what the outcome that the customer wants when they go and purchase a product like ours.
I think that's when I first watched the Kickstarter video, for me, that it was the Vesa mount stand that really, it clicked my mind about having this second screen that I could be at the airport working, traveling, I could come to the office and I could just literally throw it up and sit it on the magnet, but I could also have the same amount at home, so that when I'm working at home remotely, I can also have it there. So, yeah, those some cool accessories that you could add on as well.
Yeah. Take the productivity of your office on the go with you. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, there's your new tagline.
It's your tagline. we charge for that, by the way. Well, I mean, I guess the last thing, I think we've really spoken heavily about the product. I think it's great. I think, everybody needs to go check it out. So I think what we need to do is tell people how to go check it out and where they can get involved and learn about it and buy it and support your business.
Well, right now it's still on Indiegogo On Demand, which is a service that allows you to keep selling after your main campaign. And we're about to enter what we're calling our hard launch, where I will have units that start shipping and fulfilled by Amazon. So that will be coming in the coming weeks. But right now, it's on Indiegogo in demand. So we can send you that link as well.
And we have a 27 to 34% discount on that because it is a pre-sale and there is a bit of an extra weight, but we're getting real close there now. So now's a good window to support us and still get one of the first displays that get out there.
Awesome. We'll make sure.
Oh, sorry. And,
go.
the easy way to get to it is www.espressodisplays.com.au, and that'll take you right there. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll make sure we'll put that into the show notes on our podcast platforms, which is great. Look, I mean, thanks very much for for coming on board and telling us your story. I think we have a story, you guys have a story, and I think that's the reason why we love to talk to people like yourself. If anybody listening who's got ideas or stories and is thinking about doing something, like take a listen to this podcast. I think there's a lot of cool tips and tricks and some insight here around starting a business and ways you can do it without all the expense that comes with starting a business. And I think it's just a great story, guys, and we love it. Obviously, we can resonate with it. I think we're definitely going to go and check it out after this. But look, thanks for being on. Thanks for catching up with us. Thanks for being on the show. And like I said, we'll put all the details into our show notes. But thanks, guys, and good luck with everything, boys. Another episode done and dusted. Dom, Bosco, anything else to add?
That's a good one. Good one to learn about a good Aussie startup.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think love hearing those stories about the Aussie startups. I mean, I think we're obviously one ourselves, and with our Australian customer service and our local support team here, it's good to hear other guys having success. And so, anybody out there, go and support your local team, not your local team, but your local business team, and get behind them, especially in a time of the world that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, and if you've got a business idea, just don't be afraid to start.
Yeah, exactly. And if anybody's got any ideas and want to be on our podcast, email us at podcast@letsbemates.com.au. See you, Dom. See you, Bosco.
See you, Faz.
See ya.
See you guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Let's Be Mates podcast by the team at Mate.
Search for the Let's Be Mates podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and at letsbemates.com.au. Hit subscribe to get the latest episode each week.
For all your telco needs, choose a provider you can trust like a mate. Visit letsbemates.com.au, Google Mate, or call us on 13 14 13 to sign up today.
See you soon, mate.